And I believe we are live. What's up, everybody? Hello, YouTube. How are y'all doing today? All right. Julia from Mexico, you're here early. I love it. Love to hear where everybody is from. And then I've got a quick question for everybody once everybody's joining. But just let me know where you're from, where you're watching the stream from today. And I'm going to say hey in the chat. And while I do that, I'm going to introduce my two co-hosts. And I'm going to go totally off script for this one. So coming up first, we have the person who knows the most about sharks and all of predictable revenue. She's also pretty phenomenal at writing sales emails. She's been doing it for a number of years here at Predictable Revenue. I think one of the longest standing account strategists, Celia?
I think I am.
She's basically the veteran of messaging here at PR. So we're lucky to have her. You've probably written, I don't know, thousands of campaigns at this point.
I would say so.
Yeah, and in the beautiful paisley, we have Jonathan, who I promise you is not wearing pajama pants underneath that lovely, lovely shirt. And
you weren't going to tell them, Colin.
If you are wearing pajama pants, I just want you to push a 1 or type 1 into the chat. Let me know if you are also wearing pajama pants. I'm wearing shorts because pajama pants would just be way too hot for me right now. But Jonathan, you've been an account strategist with us for a couple of years. You run one of the teams. Probably also have written thousands of different emails, including a bunch. The two of you both have experience with our outbound validation, the OV campaigns. So we've got a variety of different experience ranging from pure sales development to follow-ups to nurture campaigns to outbound experiments. Both have been involved in the outbound labs as well as in the OV. I'm Colin, as always. I don't know if you remember me from last time, but I was the guy that was here. Woolulu, welcome back. I'm gonna remember where that's from. Noah, how you doing from Vancouver? We got some solid Vancouver representation in here. We got some California, Philly, Alabama, Mexico. I mean, Julia doesn't count though because she's part of the team. She's required to be here. So Santa Rosa, beautiful spot. Marina Del Rey, love it there. Delhi, very cool. I've never been. Portugal, I would also like to go. Toronto, kind of meh. Portland, I hope you're doing okay down there. I'm sure it's way better in there. I have a friend there who's saying it's way better in person than it looks on the news. But that's enough about me and the team. Today we are talking about what makes a great sales email. We're going to be talking about subject lines, calls to action, messaging, how to get people to respond, what types of responses. We're going to go through. We've got some slides that we can go through, but we also have some. So we could basically do slides, or we could go through and answer a bunch of questions. And so let me know in the comments if you want more slides, type 1 right now. If you want more answering questions, type 2 in the chat. And I'm just going to wait and see where everybody's at and where they want us to focus. Well, who's going to pull up their screen, Jonathan or the Celia?
I'll throw it up there.
Sorry I'm late, guys. I was on another meeting.
Hey, no problem, Carrie. We say hello to YouTube. Everybody, this is Carrie.
Hi, guys.
Perfect. Thanks, Carrie. Awesome. So we're going to start with some slides, and we'll get Carrie to join us in a minute. We also have the opportunity a little bit later, once we get through some of these slides, if you've got some sales messaging that you want to see, that you want us to help work with you on, type 3 into the chat, and Marisol will flag you and let you know that, or let me know to pay attention to you, and we'll get that going. So, Jonathan, I'm just waiting for everything to catch up, but I think we've got the slides going shortly here, and I'm just waiting for YouTube to catch up to where we're at. But I think we're good to go. So we're going to start with some slides, and Jonathan, take it away. Jonathan, Celia, take it away.
Awesome. Well, hi, everybody. We're excited to be here with you today. Ignore the fact that I'm going to be looking at a different screen for a lot of this, not directly at you. So we're going to talk about, the secrets of writing cold outbound messaging. And the first secret is that there isn't one. And I think probably Celia can probably attest to this too. One of the most fundamental things that we've learned is that it really depends on your solution, who you're targeting, the industry, and a whole host of other factors. So I think really our focus today is to talk about the principles of what makes messaging work well. And you have to work to kind of apply that to your own unique situation. All right. So what makes a cold email that people will read? Well, something that is clear, concise, relevant, and personal. And so we're going to go through each of these topics in a little bit more detail, and then kind of break down into some actual live sales development emails that we'll be working on today. So clear, like windows. I noticed that this also has a lot of frosted windows after I got this ready. So not like those ones, more like the outside ones that you can actually see through. So,
nice picture. When you said Windows, I thought, oh, like XP or 7 or 10.
XP or 98, because current Windows platforms I'm not sold on.
98, come on, man. 95 was clearly the best.
I didn't have a computer yet, Colin. I was too young.
Fair.
It dates me. So clarity, being clear. Clarity affords focus. Some famous coaching guy whose name I forget said that. So one of the things that we see a lot is sometimes outbound sales copy can look a lot like marketing copy. And these things are pretty discrete. They're very separate. So outbound sales is a little bit more of a conversational approach. So you're not trying to be fancy. You want to avoid using jargony language unless that's something that will actually enhance clarity, right? Like you may be targeting some technical personas, and so you need to be specific around what they're doing for them to understand that is actually relevant to them and not just something that is totally general. You want to make sure that these emails flow naturally. So think about, would what you're saying be something that a normal person would say in a conversation about your topic, as opposed to talking about, every possible buzzword that you can think of. Don't necessarily steal the language from your website, because that's designed for a specific intent, and that intent is not necessarily the exact same as what you're going for here. One of the big things that we need to be mindful of, and I know it's particularly hard for those of us in Canada who don't receive as many outbound emails, is that your prospects are receiving a lot of them, tens, dozens, hundreds per day or week. And so we have to make sure that they don't have to think too hard about what it is that you want. While you are very focused on your product or service, they're focused on all the million things that they have to do during their day. So when you get to a point where you're asking for something for your prospect, it should be something that has very low cognitive demand. You want to make sure that if you're asking for something direct, that you maybe highlight some specific times. If you're asking for a referral, help them visualize who it is that you're actually going after. Don't assume that they're going to think really hard about who it is that you're trying to connect with, because they don't know you and frankly don't really care about you that much. So make it very easy for them. If you're using a bit of a softer ask, you want to make sure it's not a nebulous question for that same reason. And then be specific, right? How can you make your prospect's world better? That's really what they care about. If something's too general, it's going to get deleted along with all the other emails that they received probably that exact day that say the same thing about helping them grow their sales, reduce their costs, and all those other kind of really generic value propositions. So if you had software to grow sales as an explanation of what you do, that's probably a little too general. But if you said something like a Salesforce integration that enables your reps to execute a much higher volume of calls, now that's something that they can maybe relate to and understand if it's going to fit into their business and benefit them. So next up, we have Celia talking about conciseness. You'll notice that there is no subheading because it's concise.
Just before we move on, I threw this in the chat, but how's my call to action here? So let's say we were doing a live stream where we were talking about cold email messaging, and I said, click subscribe so you don't miss our next video. Would that be a good one?
Yeah.
See what I did there? If you're watching,
absolutely.
click subscribe.
Little low-key slide.
Yeah, there we go. Back to Celia.
Yeah, so when you're writing your emails, you do want to be fairly concise with what you're saying. You have to keep in mind that a lot of people are looking at these through their mobiles. It's not something you want to have to be scrolling through. And you don't want to use a ton of words. You want to just keep it short, keep it to the point, keep it simple. So yeah, that's basically it.
I love how short and concise that was. You killed
You know what? This is why I'm talking about it, because this is what I do.
you killed as many words as
Cecilia's
possible.
best dad. I will throw out a really quick caveat here, is that if your copy is particularly unique or humorous or stands out in some way, you might be able to get away with something longer. But that is hard to do, and don't assume that you are more funny than you are.
Perfect. But just before we jump on to the next one here, Noah is asking, how important is validation of your company in the first email? So I'm assuming you mean like some social proof, recognition in the industry. Hard to add that and be concise.
Well, don't you worry, because we're going to talk about that a bit.
Beautiful. And what about the length of the subject line? Are we going to cover that a little bit later? Beautiful. All right, Lee, sit tight. I got your back. Back to you, Jonathan.
So subject lines. Realistically, you do want to keep it pretty short. 1 to 4 words is kind of the sweet spot for it. If you're making mention of something in the subject line, like outbound sales, for example, you need to make sure that's mentioned in the message. You don't want to do like a bait and switch, but if you do keep it quite short, it's generally going to pique somebody's interest to actually open that message, especially if it's something that they're doing internally as well. It'll catch their interest. So we've got some examples here, just across a couple of different emails that we've actually tested on our own. User conversion was 69% open, control comments 65%, appointment rescheduling 67%. So you can see sort of what's there. And then in terms of the body, you do want to keep it short. So going back to the previous mention of keeping the message short, considering the fact that it's going to be on a mobile phone, if it's under 100 words, it's going to perform well. If it's under 50, it's even better. Hey is better than hi. You do want to keep in mind that you're talking to another person. You don't need to be so professional, I guess. Keep it simple. Keep it an open conversation. So say things like, hey, keep it short. That's it.
Awesome. Any questions before we move on? Looking good, Colin?
Just Noah here saying regarding the length of subject line, it's nice to add in a custom field like their company name to manage their inboxes. Is that selfish and useless? So there's been some data on this. I think adding the first name in tanks has a negative impact on response rates, and adding in their company name or your company name can have a positive. Now, this is on average, so it's gonna like take out the highs and lows. Everybody on the call will either have like good experiences or bad experiences, because you could have, an instance where, the way averages work, and I don't mean to be an idiot and explain math to you, but you could have Celia, Jonathan, and myself where, if the average is, say, a 50% reply rate, just to make the math easy because I'm a dum-dum, Celia could have a 100% reply rate, Jonathan could have a 0% reply rate, and I could have a 50%, and the average would be 50. And that means only one of us would have actually experienced like close to a 50%. Celia would have had a great experience, Jonathan would have had a terrible experience. And so there's always going to be variety, especially when we're using averages, so be very careful. These are all things to test. But go ahead, Celia.
Can I just jump in with that too? You're totally right there. I think with subject lines, it really is something that you want to keep really simple. For me personally, I don't like to add company names in it. We've done a lot of testing, Jonathan and I both, in our outbound validation program too, where you literally pull a couple of words from the body of the email and put that as your subject line, and you can see the results of the open rate go up a lot. So I would give that a shot.
Absolutely. I just want to touch really quickly on that sales loft research that Colin was talking about there. So yeah, from that first name, actually didn't perform that great. Their company name, I believe, also had on average a negative impact on results. Your company name, surprisingly, in many cases, actually has of kind of an outsized positive impact on results. So if we sent someone a message that just said predictable revenue, actually probably have a pretty good open rate. If you send them a message about their company name, potentially not. So might be helpful for your inboxing, but it may be potentially negatively impacting open rates. So good to split test that against something else.
Yeah, just a good question sort of in the chat here. A Touch of Class Bridal is asking if it depends on industry. And I'd love to say that it does, but unfortunately it doesn't. We're not as unique. We're not the snowflakes that we think we are at our companies and our products and our offerings. It's one of the things I hear most from people that are new to predictable revenue, and they're saying, hey, you know, I read the book, but will it work for me and my company? Or, well, I think my product is hard to explain. It's really complex. And the trick is it shouldn't be hard to explain and complex. And if it's hard to explain or if it's complex, you just haven't found the right language to, I'll say it bluntly, you haven't put the work in to explain it simply. And so for those that are saying, oh, well, it's different for me, it's like, no, it's not different. It's the same for everybody because we're humans emailing other humans in a B2B context. And across that, the only thing that's going to really change is the job or the responsibility or the roles. And so the methodology, the sort of frameworks we're talking about don't change too much. Certain personas, certain industries are going to be a little bit more open to certain channels, or certain types of individuals in certain roles are going to be a little bit more open to say email or versus LinkedIn, or a direct ask versus a soft ask. But we're talking about like fairly micro adjustments as opposed to like very big, like it works for engineers, but it doesn't work for sales ops people. It's not those big shifts. Perfect. All right, so I'll let you come back to it. I'll read the comments, and then I see Arthur and Noah have got some comments in the chat here, so we'll jump in there. But back to you two.
Absolutely. Yeah, just to echo what Colin said there, there's going to be industries where it's harder to keep things simple, but that just means you have to put more work to do it. And really, you need to ruthlessly simplify how you communicate about your product. You know, I can empathize if you have a very complex solution. You know, I had a client that had like a $500,000, $1 million deal size because it was just like a massive enterprise system. It was very technical, targeted like CTOs and engineering leaders, and it was really hard to simplify. But as we made it more simple, we got better results. So definitely be willing to put in that time. Let's talk about relevance. Relevance is a big topic. So I kind of broke it down to a couple different areas. How relevance builds trust. Your prospect doesn't care about you. Psychology stuff. And is, does, means, which will make more sense once we get to that slide. So how relevance builds trust. You know, I think the first thing that's important to do is define what we mean by relevance. And it's important to remember that it's really hard to convince someone to want something outside of their kind of realm of experience. So when we say that you want to be relevant, we want you to be relevant to things that your prospect already wants. So that does mean you need to put in the time to figure out what they do want and how they talk about it. But you don't want to try to convince them to want something different. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a second. The other important factor that we see lost a lot of time is that context is incredibly important. So if you want to listen to music, that's a job that you're trying to accomplish. The solution is very different if you're trying to listen to music at the library to study, as opposed to listen to music at a party to dance with your friends or something. So just as with that, when you reach out to your prospect, you have to make sure that you're positioning your solution in the context of what they're trying to do, so they can go and say, hey, this is actually really relatable to me. It's not this kind of general thing that may or may not work, and I'm not going to go investigate it because I'm busy. Hopefully that makes sense. So what we try to do here at Predictable Revenue is we focus on jobs to be done theory. And so a job to be done is the specific progress that your prospect wants to make. And we combine that with the obstacles that they're facing to kind of bring that context together. And these things may be very granular. Probably if I've learned anything, is that they can be more granular than we typically give them credit for. And really subtle changes in language and framing these things have a big impact.
Understatement of the entire live stream right there. I swear I've changed one word, a single word in an email that was 2 to 3 lines, and it like 4x'd, 5x'd the reply rate. And I'm like, one word, 6 letters. That meant the exact same thing to me, but it meant something dramatically different to prospects. So I just wanted to emphasize the point here.
Absolutely. And I had a great example of that in one of my clients' campaigns recently. We were using the phrase data transformation, and people were getting really confused. We changed it to data integration. Super clear now. So that subtlety of words can have a huge impact. One thing that's really important to remember as well, though, is that your prospects are already getting the job that they're trying to do done now. They just might not be doing it very well, or they might be facing obstacles. So you have to give them a little bit of credit that they do have something in place typically to help them accomplish what they're doing. It just might be manual, it might be painful, it might not be as comprehensive, but it can be important to acknowledge that. So when it comes to building trust, which I guess what this whole slide is supposed to be about, is that if your prospect doesn't know you or your company, you have to figure out how to build credibility. We'll talk about case studies and metrics in a second, but really one of the best ways to build credibility is to be incredibly specific and relevant about the job they're trying to accomplish and the obstacle that they're facing. You can think of that kind of like the business problem that they have. So if you reach out to someone and they don't know you, but you talk to them about the exact issue that they're facing, and you present a solution or talk about an idea to overcome that exact obstacle that's stopping them from accomplishing that exact job they're trying to do, they're going to say something like, wow, this person really understands my business. And so that gives you credibility when you don't have that trust built in another way from brand awareness or something like that. So, I think, a lot of people will kind of bemoan the fact that they don't have maybe big brand name case studies or something like that they can kind of throw around. And while those things do make the job a bit easier, the person is going to care more that you know precisely what their problem is and can solve it than that you work with Coca-Cola, for example. So when it comes to case studies and metrics, they're really only helpful if they're very relevant to the person's goals. Otherwise, they're probably just taking space in your email. As I mentioned, you may be able to leverage well-known names, but if you work with an unknown company that you've helped with the exact thing that your prospect is worried about, that's going to be probably a better case study than the big company with something more general. Finally, people aren't very great with percentages. So whenever it's possible, if you can talk to them about hard numbers, dollar figures, hours saved, things like that, psychologically, it just makes a little more sense for us. Cool. Give that a quick second if there's any questions around this one.
Yeah, let me see here. Let me see. We've got a couple here. You know what? I think we're good right now. We had a question from a Touch of Class and Bridal, and they were asking, we don't have any company names. We have brides and grooms. First name usually. Is this proper? So like this is one of those examples. Like I said, there's going to be like variety or variation from industry to industry, but like it's subtle. Obviously, if you have no company name, I'd probably go with like something like the event name, like Colin Jonathan Wedding, something like that, or like whatever the. If you've got the last names, Stuart Cathcart, Stewart Wedding, something along those lines.
Very progressive.
Cool.
All right.
I didn't feel like I had the authority to marry you and Celia on the call here.
My wife might not like that. So. She'd be more understanding of you and I, Colin.
It's like, turns out I'm actually at sea, so this is a legal wedding. The two of you, I now pronounce. Next slide, please.
Sure. So the hard truth is that your prospect doesn't care about you, at least not yet. And I know it kind of makes us feel bad because we really care about ourselves and we really care about our product or solution. Am I allowed to curse on these?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, they don't give a shit. All right, so.
Not that curse.
Okay, sorry. So you really need to spend some time researching their world. I'm sure a lot of salespeople have heard about WIIFM, everybody's favorite radio station, what's in it for me. And it's corny, but it's true. So you need to cut through that noise by using the kind of same language that they would use when they're talking about the problems that they have. And you might be surprised to find that the way that you or your company frames the jobs people are trying to do and the obstacles they're facing is actually very different from how they talk about it. So there's a couple ways that you could approach that. You can interview your customers. You can talk to colleagues in your business that have similar roles to who you're targeting. Or you can even just go out and look at job postings many times. You can see exactly how businesses are advertising for the people that they need to solve specific problems that they have. But that is really critical to do, because you might think that you're encapsulating their issue in a very succinct and straightforward way, but if they talk about internally using entirely different words, and it just doesn't even register to them a lot of the time. And finally, how's your solution unique, right? You need to figure out why would they, so you got their attention, why would they actually pick you instead of another company that does something similar? And if you're a incredibly unique technology solution, then great, there might not be anything quite like what you do, but there are a lot of industries that are busier and more competitive. So you really have to just figure out what is that thing that makes you unique. Tacking on to them not caring about you is we want to focus on them and use you-focused language. Try to make them the hero of the conversation. So whenever possible, try not to help your prospect do things. Try to enable them and present it from their perspective. So you'll find, you'll be able to, others have, if you need to go that route. So you're trying to empower them to solve their problem, not trying to say or portray yourself as coming to their rescue, right? People really want to buy things, they don't want to be sold, right? We've heard that a million times. So a great analogy that I heard is if your prospect is Mario and your product is Fire Flower that lets you shoot fireballs, don't sell the Fire Flower, you need to sell badass Fire Mario. So what is it that they could be from having or using your solution? Not necessarily just what is your solution.
While you're pausing there, I got a question from David from a few comments ago. Any recommendations on cold emails going specifically after people that are using one of your competitors?
Yeah, a bit. So this goes back to people getting the job done already. And so because they're already getting the job done, and it's probably working at least marginally well for them, and in many cases they might have even selected that solution, it's really important that you don't go in and badmouth your competitors, right? So you talk about how you don't necessarily want to say like, I know what you're using, right? Unless it's very accessible information, because I can come across a little creepy.
I know what software you bought last summer.
Exactly. So you can talk about like, hey, we usually find people are using a competitor solution. But often they struggle with like XYZ. You never have to worry about that kind of thing using our solution. So it's setting up a contrast without telling them that the choice that they made was a stupid choice, right? That will not endear you with them at all.
Can I add some context from the OV market validation side of things? Because I always come back to Kenny's our chains of relevance, and if we're thinking about what sort of level that we're writing the message on, right? We probably, if they're using a competitor, we know we have the right company. So I'll go through the chain, and then I'll triangulate where I would focus. So the chain goes company, that's obvious. Persona, that's the individual or the job titles you're going after. Responsibility, that's what's on their job description. That's what, if you Google sort of CMO job posting, that's what you'll find. It's like, hey, you were responsible for these things. Goal is something that's specific to what they're trying to accomplish this year, this quarter. Job to be done is the specific thing that they're trying to do to accomplish the goal. The obstacle or friction is the thing that's getting in the way of them accomplishing that job to be done. And then the product or service is how you solve that job to be done. So it all that's how it all ties to the job to be done. And how I would position it against a competitor is probably, I'd be zooming into the goal or the job to be done specifically, but it also depends on how that competitor is positioned, right? Is our feature overlap 100%, or is it is there a Venn diagram? This is my terrible Venn diagram. I know it kind of looks like a heart. I didn't mean it to be this. I was trying to be this. But basically, like, what is the overlap? And then where I might focus on is like, hey, you probably want this core, but I bet you're missing this side of my Venn diagram. And I wouldn't frame it, I wouldn't use language like that, but I would try and ask questions to elicit, are you happy? Would you ever find a feature like this valuable? And again, I'm not, if I was to write this email, I wouldn't use these exact words. I'm trying to convey the general idea. And if anything, I can guarantee you I am the worst one at writing messaging on this call because I don't do it regularly. And it's sort of like running or swimming or riding a bike. If you stop doing it for a while and then you jump back into it, you're gonna know roughly the strokes. But it's going to take you a couple swims in the pool to get your rhythm back. And so if I tried to write a cold email right now, Jonathan and Celia would just laugh at me. I guarantee it. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on competitors. Back to the two of you, and I'll keep an eye out on some questions.
Awesome. Celia would definitely laugh at you.
100%.
Pretty transparent that way.
Shark
What
Week.
we love about her.
Actually, Shark Fest, Colin.
I'm sorry. It's if you're wondering why we're getting silly about Shark Week, it goes back to Celia's interview. I was a jerk and I asked her some challenging questions, and I had just watched a documentary on sharks the night before, and I asked Celia, tell me something that you know lots about, and she picked sharks. And I don't know that much about sharks, but I did that day because I don't know. I just watched this documentary anyway, so she shared 3 things, and I was like, well, no, that's wrong. And so anyway, our common joke is that Celia loves sharks, and so if we're making shark jokes, that's why. Marisol is reminding me that we have some questions in the chat from Wululu. So in these types of emails, how do you create urgency? Is it feasible to create urgency in an email like this?
What type of urgency would you be looking to create? Would be my main question for that.
Yeah. Like if you put 911 in the subject line and then said, I have your children, that's some urgency, but it's probably the wrong type of urgency that you want to create. So maybe let us know in the chat. And then we've got another one here while we're waiting for Wululu to get back to us there. Les Deleuze, and I know I'm butchering that. I get good open rates from my emails, but no replies yet. Any suggestions on how to follow up for these prospects who opened but did not send a reply? So while I'm going to pass it to Jonathan and Celia, Les Deleuze, let me know in the chat. 1, did I get your name right? 2, are you sending follow-up emails at all right now? So while you let me know in the chat, I'm going to let Celia and Jonathan answer your question there.
I think that question that you just asked is sort of the most important one to really get a sense of how to get a response. Yeah, I mean, I find a lot of the times what works is just sort of creating a bumper. Generally, in your first message, you do want to give a little bit of information. In the second message, creating just a little bumper that says something like, did you see my last message? What do you think about this? And then following up from that with some more context again is sort of the way to get people to sort of pay attention. You don't want to just be sending people boatloads of information after email after email after email. Break it up, keep it concise, and use the context, but keep it short.
Love it.
Way to tie that back in.
That's what I do.
Just to add this little color to that one too about bumpers, if we look at a campaign and its performance, often half of the responses come from those emails. Hey, first name, any thoughts?
Yeah.
Hey, are you the best person to reach out to about this?
Mm-hmm.
So, Celia is exactly right that you don't want to continue to bombard them with information. Oftentimes they were just busy or they didn't see it.
Yeah.
So you just point them back to your well-crafted first email by asking them something, very undemanding, like, are you the best person to reach out to? And that should elicit a lot more responses for you.
And with that too, give it a couple of days. Don't hit them with another email the next day. Give it a day or 2.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And
they're busy people.
If I can build on what you're saying, I think if you're getting a large number of opens but no replies, I would go and revisit your targeting, right? Because opens don't necessarily mean that people are reading your emails. There are some email systems like Gmail that automatically open every single email. So if you're sending to a large number of people that use Gmail, Google Apps, then you're getting 100% opens from those. Just, I won't go into the details, but it's how Gmail does it. So it loads before the person, so you might get a read receipt from, or not a read receipt, but it's kind of a read receipt. You might get one from the Google app machine before your person has even actually read it. So don't trust those too much. It's a good signal of, am I making it through to inboxes? But it's not always a great signal of like, are people reading it? And so if you're sending a bunch of emails and you're not getting replies, double check the targeting, because that's a huge one. If you're trying to sell HR software and you're for some reason emailing farmers in Nebraska, like, it doesn't matter how good your messaging is. It doesn't matter how many times you tweak it, how many times you tune it, how many iterations or A/B tests. Like, farmers aren't going to buy your HR software. And if you are a farmer that's listening and you do buy HR software, let me know that I'm stupid. But just as an example, I've used forever and I'm sticking with it.
I think you should consider your subject line as well. Does it play into the message itself? I mean, there's a lot of times where you can write you can write a subject line that, is sort of just a clickbait. People will open it and it has nothing to do with the context inside of it. I'm not saying that's what it is, but consider what the subject line is versus the body of the email, and that may just need some tweaking.
Absolutely. And I think this next slide or two will actually address some of that too. So, any other questions before we can jump back in? Or
so just coming back to Woolaloos, they were saying urgency would be like a value-add solution that elicits a positive response, like act now for 50% off or something like that, which feels to me like a more of a marketing style email where you're trying to get them to click or get them to buy. Whereas I think where our experience, and I'm not saying those are like bad emails to write. Totally cool. You're like, you're more than welcome to send those. Not our area of expertise. And I think specifically what we're focusing on is like, how does one human send another human an email and get them to take a meeting with them? And that's really what our experience, that's our experience. That should be the tagline of Predictable Revenue.
how do you communicate with other people?
Exactly. Ron, before we jump on, we've got Ron, and I'm realizing I missed a question from Robert earlier. With workforce software, we are starting to serve some of the largest companies in the world. How would you approach people differently, have people in Fortune 100 differently? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that they're tremendously different. So the one thing that you find typically as companies get larger is that the responsibility for a specific job becomes lower on the hierarchy, right? There's a big difference between being this, CEO of a 50-person company or a 100,000-person company in terms of what they're responsible for, right? If you're in a smaller company and you have a senior title, you're probably actually involved in a lot of the like really day-to-day stuff, or at least close to it and really aware of it. As a company gets larger, that you become more and more divorced from that and more just focused on strategy as opposed to the tactical side of things. So if you were maybe targeting, VP of engineering at, I guess in this case, HR or something, if you're targeting like a VP of HR operations at a smaller company, the person responsible for that might be more of like a manager or director level at one of these really large companies. So that's one thing to bear in mind. The other challenge is that for these kind of more common titles, there can just be so many of those people at a large company, right? A really big company might have 50 directors of operations for different business units or areas. So in those cases, you might need to do a little bit more research in advance to really figure out who that is, or supplement your outreach with some top-down referrals, trying to get pointed towards that specific person. Because one of them might be super relevant, and to another person that has nothing to do with their job, and they'll have the same title.
Celia, something to add?
I was just going to agree with John on that. I think the top-down approach of referral for that type of bigger company is definitely the way to go. There are so many people with very similar titles that, you don't want to create this personal crafted message to someone who it may not be the right person. So sort of taking a referral approach to that is generally going to get you better results if you're not entirely sure of who it is.
Totally fair. And the thing I'll add is some like as a frame around what Celia and John mentioned is just if you're going after the Fortune 100, by definition, there are fewer of those companies, right? I think there's only like 150 of the Fortune 100, right? I know math. I'm good. But I think my messaging and everything, like my approach would change if I have 100 total accounts to go after versus 1,000 versus 10,000. And so that's one thing that you want to be paying attention to is how much time do I want to invest into each individual prospect? There's no right or wrong answer here, but it is something that you want to consider. If there's 100 companies and you can only, and the CEO is the only person that can buy from you, you know, you're going to have 100 very customized, very personal campaigns where you're probably borderline stalking this individual in person. If there are 100,000 prospects, well, you've got a great big blue ocean for you right in front of yourself. And I'd probably do things that scale a little bit better. There is going to be this balance between investing, like the more time you invest, the better the response rates are going to be. But you might actually get, if you look at the sort of the total output, you might actually get more by investing a little bit less time per prospect and then contacting a few more prospects. And so it's a math equation. You need to make some assumptions. Before we move on to the next slide, I've got to ask, because nobody's asked about it in the chat here. How do you karate chop them in the limbic system?
We're going to go through the slide now, so I'll talk about some karate chopping in the limbic system in a second. Cool. You do it by asking questions or writing things like that. So let's talk about some psychology stuff. So actually, part of my university studies was psychology. It prepared me about 0% for sales because you know what you learn in university versus what you learn in more practical application are very different things. But one thing I did learn is that human brains focus on loss aversion. And so if you can position your solution in a way to talk about the opportunity cost of not using it as opposed to the return on investment, you are actually getting that person's attention more. So think about this, and add zeros if you have lots more money than I do. But you'll be more upset if you lose $100 than you would be excited if you find $100, right? And if that doesn't mean anything to you, make it 1,000 or whatever. So you know you want to help the prospect understand what it's costing them by not using your solution, as opposed to how your solution can make something 30% better. So I'm going to say the limbic system thing. So paint a picture. There's a big difference between these two statements. So we help you increase field sales meetings by 30%, and I want to automate away route planning, call reports, and order entries so your reps can spend more time selling. Right. One of those things is easy for a person to visualize and understand how it fits in within the workflow of their team. The other one is a number, and a good number because these are metric-focused individuals, but there's just not that same type of connection there. So this is the one area where, while you still want to be concise, you have some license to explain things in a more compelling way. It doesn't just have to be like, grow your sales 20%, right? You want them to be able to, without a lot of thought, understand how it's going to exactly impact their workflow, their team workflow, their bottom line, whatever. And painting a picture is one of the ways that you can evoke emotions, but there are other ways. So it's important to understand that people make decisions based on their emotions, and then they back that up with logic later on. And I'm a really analytical person. I like to think that I make most of my decisions around logic, but the reality is that that's not the case most of the time for most people. So if your email is not eliciting emotion, it's not impacting the primary way that people make decisions, right? At least in the beginning of those decisions. So that's where karate chopping them in the limbic system comes in. The limbic system is responsible for emotions, motivation, things like that. And maybe you don't want to karate chop, maybe you want to do something nicer to them. But you have to throw something out there that gives them some kind of emotional reaction, even if that's just like a smile or a nod or a little chuckle or something like that, or they feel the pain of something they hate about their job because you've kind of highlighted it. But those are the kinds of things that are going to make people engage with the rest of your message and then hopefully respond to you. So, how can you get rid of something that they don't like is one way to look at it. So, kind of going on with the example that I was using under paint a picture. This is all kind of based off of one of our clients. You'll never have to chase down reps for activity reports or meeting notes again. Right? 'Cause that was a significant problem that a lot of the field sales teams that they targeted had. It's all manual processes. At the end of the day, you're trying to call your rep, they're trying to do admin work, right? You kind of seem like you're micromanaging them, but you actually need that data to help them do their job better. And you hate that part, they hate that part. Just talk about how they hate that part, don't have to do it anymore, right? That will get an emotional reaction from them. Cool. Anything before we tackle is, does, means?
Is, does, means?
Yeah.
Let me have a look here. I did promise that, where'd he go? Ron, I'd get back to you here. So Ron was asking about our thoughts on video emails. It doesn't scale like pure email, but it's so personal. It takes a ton of effort that it's going to be highly relevant. I hate them personally. This is not like Colin, the CEO, talking. It's just such a huge investment, especially when you're sending them cold. But I would come back to my previous answer of we were talking about sort of the Fortune 100, right? How many prospects do you have? If you have 6 prospects, I'm probably going to go visit them in person. If you have, and like send them videos, send them flowers, send them a dartboard with my picture on it, send them pizza with my picture in there, like crazy weird things that normal people wouldn't do because you need to get their attention. If you're in that sort of sweet spot of a few hundred to 1,000 prospects, in the context of the sequence, there's probably a point where that makes sense. But you want to make sure you've got like a human that's reading your emails first. So I probably wouldn't do it first. I'd probably, when I have done it, I know I have a prospect. I've done it more in the account exec context where I've got somebody that we've had a conversation. I know them and I'm trying to re-engage them. I'm trying to wake them back up and get them to reply. And so I'm going to send them like a short snippet. But that's more of like an AE approach. Celia, John, what do you think?
So, I mean, we've had a bit of experience doing something like that with creating videos.
Yep.
I wasn't a fan of it. I think, like Colin said, when it's a smaller group of people that you're targeting, you can really put that time in and create something like that is going to be memorable. Doing it on a high level scale of just like tons and tons of people, it's going to be a lot of time put into it. In order to get the type of personalization, even just having their name in it, it's just going to take a lot of time. So it's not really my thing.
I'll echo that too. This is ROI analysis that you need to do, right? If you have limited prospects, you need to get the most out of them. If you have a lot of prospects, that probably prevents you from doing more scale. That would actually get you more results. So just exactly what they said. And so that's going to really depend on what that market looks like for you.
All right.
All right.
Sorry. Somebody jumped in that from YouTube, I'm assuming, and started singing and typing out Hey Jude lyrics. And so now I've got Hey Jude stuck in my head. So if you're wondering, what is that strange comment that Colin just threw in the comments? It's the next line to what they were singing. Chris was asking about, so our referral campaign targets C-suite, and often the language and tone is quite different from the one required with our true POC. When we have combined communication, what do we stick to? So Chris, before I let the two of these people answer, I will, not that I needed to tell you they're people. I don't know why I decided to use that word, but anyway, can you let me know like who your targets are? Is it's C-suite, like CEO, and then who is the person that's sort of your true POC? So let me know in the comments. And then Celia, Jonathan, what do you think?
Can you just repeat that question, sir?
So referral campaign targets C-suite, and often the language and tone is very different from the person that they're getting referred to. So like, do you write differently for the C level, like for the CEO, and say it's a CEO and a VP of operations? Would you write different messaging?
And they're the same email. That's what it's saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you go.
So I think it depends who you're trying to talk to at that point, right? So if you've reached out to the CEO, they've referred you, and they said, this is the person that you need to speak with about this. Now you're trying to sell that person, I think, on getting on a call. right? Unless the CEO or whoever is very involved in that sale all the way through, or like need some more convincing at this point. It's really the other person that you're focused on. They're kind of like the next step in that path for you to progress. So I would be emphasizing the things that are important to them. My guess is that to get that C-suite referral, you probably already emphasized some things that are important to that person, or usually they wouldn't bother to respond to you. So if you've already addressed that a little bit, I would really focus on like that next person that you need to kind of win over to get that meeting.
Perfect. All right, back to the slides. Thanks, you two.
All right. Is, does, means. I said it a bunch of times. It sounds like gibberish. Let's talk about it. So the first point, what? No one really cares about what your solution is. They care a bit about what it does, and they really care what it means for them. So let's look at some examples. So in Canada, it's called Reactin. I think in the States, it's more commonly Zyrtec, but basically allergy medication. What is it? It's a tyrosine hydrochloride. What does it do? Helps reduce your allergy symptoms. But what does it mean? It means not feeling like you're going to die at your friend with the cat's house, for me at least.
For me too.
Or avoiding dirty looks at the grocery store because people think you have COVID, all right, and you're sneezing everywhere.
That was
So,
me in all of May and June.
yeah, I was taking like 2 Reactin a day. Generic brand at Costco, much cheaper if you use these types of allergy medications,
There we
FYI. So you can see even just by Colin's kind of reaction to that, that it's more compelling when you frame it in the way of what it means to someone. So let's apply this to software and services. So Slack is communication software. Cool, there's lots of that. What it does, it enables you to communicate with others in various chat channels. Yeah, but so did ICQ, right? What it means is not having to wait forever for someone to respond to your email, or being able to collaborate in real time so that last minute thing that came through at the end of the day doesn't force you to stay late. Or enhancing the culture of your distributed team by enabling people to engage in more authentic conversations. So what Slack is and does is not super compelling because there's lots of things that can do things like that. But when you talk about what it means to the person, then there's that emotional involvement, or there's that picture that you're painting in their mind, right? Because again, you're thinking about your product, they're not thinking about your product. They don't even know what your product is probably at this point, at least not thoroughly. So you have to tell them what it means. Time for a shameless plug. So let's talk about our service, LinkedIn Outbound service. So what it is, it's LinkedIn lead generation. What it does, or what you get, is you have a strategist who helps to create, execute, and manage outbound LinkedIn campaigns on your behalf. All right, that's kind of cool, I guess. What it means, though, is you have instant access to LinkedIn strategies that have been tested across dozens of clients and industries, so you don't have to guess what will work, or you don't have to spend time, a lot of time doing things that aren't going to get you anywhere. It also means being able to rapidly scale your number of outbound sales meetings with very low risk because of I won't go into details, but cost model, things like that. So you want to say the things that you want to say what your product means to people, because they don't care what it is, and they only marginally care what it does unless there's some serious technical requirements around it.
Very cool. And just in exchange for letting us, or being our audience while we plug you, we're going to give everybody a chance to win a couple of books. And from last week, our winners were, I was just checking in the chat, I'm not sure they're here, but Mark Lawrence Stein and Swathi Mohan. So you've won your books. If you're watching this recorded, shoot us your details and we will get that to you, though I think you're subscribers. And so we're going to be reaching out over email to let you know that you've won some books. And if you want a chance to win some books, hit the subscribe button. And at the end of this stream, Marisol and Julia are going to go put all your names in a big hat. They're actually going to print them on pieces of paper that are like 6 feet wide. And then we're going to throw them up into the wind in Cancun. And we're going to see which one washes up on the shore first. And then whoever washes up on the shore first wins a book. Actually, we're going to give away 2 different books. And we're not actually going to do that, but we're going to find some less interesting way of actually picking who wins. But I just thought that was way more fun. Anyway, back to the 2 of you. But remember, subscribe if you want to win some books. Thanks, everybody.
All right. So that's the end of my long rambling portion. And we're going to move back to Concise Celia to talk about making things personal. Hashtag human connection.
It's quicker. Okay, so basically, with everything else we've talked about, you want to personalize your messaging in a way that has the prospect feeling like it was directed towards them. You don't want it to be a cookie cutter message where it's clearly a cut and paste that has literally nothing to do with them. They want to be felt to be understood, even if that's focusing on maybe a pain point they have. By looking through, their job description, saying something like, "Is this a pain you're feeling?" You can use that across everyone with that title, but it still makes it personal. Now, doing things like looking into people's LinkedIn and taking specific points is something that works when you're doing higher level companies. But it does take a lot of time. So you don't want to be doing that for every single prospect you're going after. So you really need to consider how you can create a look of being personalized while still being able to send at a high capacity. In terms of LinkedIn, again, like if there's a bunch of people who are engaging in the same sort of post or video or anything like that, those are really good points. Saying something like, "Oh, I see you went to university at wherever. Let's talk about my software product," is not good. You want to be able to tie things in together and make it make sense. So it has to still run smoothly, and you just need to, pick a point that's going to impact them or resonate with them, while still not taking a lot of time to do it. So if you want to look at some stats, with personalization on SalesLoft, you'll get a 2x increase in your reply rate just by personalizing your messages. Yeah, I mean, it's really simple to do it. Just even as I mentioned, doing something like looking at their job description, doing something by looking at maybe even the industry that they're in and focusing on little points like that where you can break it apart and make it look like you did your homework and this was specifically for this one person.
Mm-hmm. Just to touch on that, there's goes back to that sliding scale again of large, big companies, big deal sizes, small companies, large markets. If you have a large market and the time it takes to personalize 20% of your message, which is kind of the sweet spot, means you have to cut your volume by more than half, you're probably just better sending more volume in that case. But if it is these really high value prospects, then you want to find something that's about them specifically. And if they're kind of in the middle, then, as Celia mentioned, there's these other factors where you can create segments of people. You find something, relatively personal, but it's personal to these 100 people as opposed to that one person. The university one it's interesting, right? So people try to personalize and they just throw out something totally random. If you do that, you need to be very creative about how that ties in, and that's kind of like if you can't find anything else. So you might say something like, "Hey, it's interesting to see someone transition from, playing football at UMass to being a VP of sales. Our solution enables you to quarterback something, right?" You can kind of make it work, but the transition has to make sense. It has to be witty. It's not just like, "You went to university, software sales," like Celia pointed out there.
No, I'm not a huge fan of the, "Oh, you went to UMass, like go team mascots." It's not, I think it's outside of like it's not relevant. It's outside that sort of chain of what is relevant. And so I like to work my way up or down the chain and try and find bits and pieces. And obviously if you can find out from a friend of theirs that they are struggling with a specific, they've got an obstacle or some friction, right? Or they've got a job to be done and they're looking for help with it, or they've, if you don't have that, then you can jump up to like, "Okay, well, I know you're generally, responsible for this. And so I suspect you have this goal," right? And then you can look for trigger events, or you can look for things that are going to be indications of, to validate your hypothesis that, "Oh, I think they might be struggling with X." So my unasked for 2 cents.
Celia, what should they talk about?
That was a well appreciated, Colin. Basically, what we've just discussed is kind of the stuff you should be talking about. Anything that the prospect created, if you are doing sort of a LinkedIn kind of approach, where you're finding out about them through that type of venue, look at their posts, look at the stuff that they're engaging with. You can use that to benefit you. If they're creating a post that, you know, has anything to do with anything, you can make mention of it. But especially if they're liking posts that have something to do with your business, obviously that's going to benefit you. This is sort of the best way to approach it. Other ways you can do it is industry. I did mention this. So if you know that your best sort of industry target is manufacturing, let's say, this is something you can make mention of. It's not as hard hitting, but it's worth saying because they're aware that you know what they're doing, you know what space they're in. And then other decent ones are interests. But again, this is sort of going back into the university thing. This is like a last ditch thing you should be doing, and it really does have to transition well. You can't just throw out like, hey, I see that you like basketball. Let's talk about my SaaS platform. Doesn't work. Just doesn't make sense, you know? Yeah. So it really has to be a smooth transition. That's all I got.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I think if you can't find personal stuff, you might find company stuff as well. And there's kind of that tier above, you know, just mentioning their industry or their title is like, did their company do something recently that's relevant to what you do, right? Are they hiring for a role that you could support? Did they do a merger where now they need to figure out how to integrate this business with theirs? You know, there's these little trigger events that are maybe not specific to that person, but if there's someone who's going to have an impact from that, then that could be a good place to go.
Perfect. Great transition here. I just got a couple of housekeeping details. First off, as always, remember to subscribe if you want to make sure you don't miss any more videos. We're going to be live every Thursday at 10:30 Pacific Standard Time. We've got different topics and subjects and experts from Predictable Revenue that we're going to be bringing by. And so be sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to make sure you don't miss any of those notifications. And then if you need a hand, like Jonathan said, booking meetings for your salespeople, filling up your calendar, make sure you hit us up, check us out at predictablerevenue.com and our Service LinkedIn Outbound program. And then, as always, we're doing a giveaway on the stream. So if you've got if you do hit subscribe, we're giving away a couple of books. As one thing that we're also doing. Wow, there's a lot of alsos, ands. I didn't really structure this sentence correctly. But we're also bringing on people live to these streams, and we're going to be helping them. And so there are a couple people. I want to say it was Laura and True Dialogue. You had some messaging you mentioned that you wanted a hand with earlier. Throw it in the chat, and we will get to you. We got a couple people hanging out live with us in Zoom. But if you're on the stream and you want some help working through any messaging that you're currently working on, throw it in the chat. Let me know. Basically, give me the email, subject line, and then who you're going after, and we'll do our best to give you some advice and some feedback on that. Without further ado, we've got a couple of people hanging out in Zoom with us right now. Celia, why don't you let us know who's here?
So we've got Carrie Coleman. Do we have anyone else?
I think we got Victor as well.
Victor joined as well, yeah.
Okay, I can't see that. So we've got Victor and Carrie. They've actually sent over some emails for us to go over live. So thank you guys for doing that. We appreciate it. And we'll just kind of walk through them.
Perfect. And let's jump to Carrie's because I think Victor just dropped. I saw him here a couple of seconds ago. So we'll go through the checklist, then we'll go through help Carrie. And before we jump into that, Chris in the chat has a question. A huge pipeline for us is schools. How do we provide relevance for what our product can bring in? They don't put out any information referencing sort of city-state. City-state is the only general information that we can work with. What's your takes?
Yeah, I think
it would have to depend on what the product was. I mean, I've actually worked with a lot of clients in the education space. So it really does depend on sort of what the product is. And then you have to sort of figure out who it is that you're targeting. There's a lot of different ways to go about it, but I think I would need more information before I could actually give any information on it.
Yeah. To speak to that generally, I think if you, from like a principal standpoint, if you don't have the ability to personalize or draw that data from, then you need to really nail relevance. Like you need to tell them that you understand exactly what they're trying to do and exactly the obstacles that they're facing, and paint a clear picture of how you solve that. You can definitely rely, I want to call it a crutch because you should always be doing it, but you can rely on the precision of your message to overcome lack of personalization or things like that. Because by being so precise about what they're worried about right now, that's almost like you personalize it to them. You've really taken time to understand where they're coming from and how they talk about it. So that can be a way to kind of break through that.
Gotcha. So it's a hardware-based product. And obviously, so it sounds like he's selling to high schools. And so there's probably some privacy issues or some like, you're going after underage individuals, or you're not targeting them, but they'd be potentially using that. So it sounds like he doesn't want to get too deep into the details there, but I would look at what's happening. Like, what are the major trends that are impacting schools, right? Like TikTok is a huge thing. So, go back to my silly, video, send the principal a TikTok video of yourself doing the silly dance. Obviously don't take this advice. This is terrible, terrible advice. But you want to understand what the trends are, right? Like what's happening, what's on their mind. If you think about, if you're selling to the principal, what is the principal responsible for, right? Student safety, it's the education curriculum. And so I would try and figure out like, what are the things that are relevant that's in the news? What are the things that are relevant about the school? If you do just do some Googling about the specific school, that's sort of how I would frame it. Celia, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think I would kind of frame it the same way, just sort of going back to what John said as well. I mean, you really do have to be aware of especially what's going on with the news at this point in time, and just make that sort of the focus. How is this going to help them with what's going on in the world, or what's going on in their school, or what the job that they have is focused on? Just doing that sort of personifying is where you're going to get their interest.
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right, so let's get to the live emails. And I see Lisa and Laura and Wululu have some messaging. What I might do just to help make it easy, because I think I'm going to get lost in the chat, I'm going to give you Marisol's email. I'm going to have you email her, and then she's going to throw it into the slides here. So we'll get to them after we get to Carrie. So back to you, Jonathan and Celia.
All right, so let's dive in really quick. So just for some context, we're going to be using these things that we've talked about to have a conversation about the emails that have been submitted to us. And these slides, I believe, will be available after, so you can kind of pull this stuff, apply it to your own content that's going out. Now, one thing I wanted to say just before we start talking about live emails is that we really appreciate people who have submitted them. It takes a lot of guts to put that out there. If I were your manager, this is exactly the kind of thing that I would want to be seeing you doing, taking that initiative to go out there and better your craft. So really kudos to everybody who is doing that. And then I apologize if parts of this become a little surgical, but it is all well-meaning. So let's dig in. Celia.
So thank you, Carrie, for sending this over. This is an example of what she sent us. This would be an initial message that's going out to a prospect, right?
Yes.
Cool. So I don't know if I need to read the whole thing or if everyone can read it themselves.
I hope they can read. So
I don't want to.
Could you read it with like a silly accent, maybe, just to spice it up a bit?
I have a silly accent anyway.
Yeah. I think for time's sake, we can probably just move into some of the questions and things about it.
Yeah, so I mean, basically what John and I did is we took a look at these live emails that were sent over and sort of did some back end work on them based off of that checklist. So this is all kind of going into the points of what we've been discussing throughout the last hour with the slides that we've gone over as well. So just to start looking at this email, what words could you cut out to create the same sort of sentiment, but sort of shorten the email a little bit? And this is directed to you, Carrie.
So much. uh, like, obviously, I don't need to say, "Am I in the right place?" I can just say, "I'm right," or "I hope to find the right person to handle molding and manufacturing needs for your company." Um, is that you? I guess. And then eccentric mold and engineering helps increase revenues of other manufacturing companies. I guess I could. The first part I can leave out.
Mhm.
And I don't need that. Our goal is to help people out, obviously.
Mhm.
I mean, that whole next sentence paragraph can be deleted too.
So do you kind of get the sense of why I'm asking the question, though? It is,
Yes,
you can really shorten things,
for sure.
keep it concise. But just
I'm not good at that, obviously.
and I mean that's why we're here. So it's
And-
totally cool.
And in fairness, just to give Carrie some backup here, it's not that you're not good at it. The first email, the first draft of every email I've written, it looks like this. And the only thing that I can guarantee is that the first thing that you write is gonna be a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And the difference between a terrible message and a great message is typically iterations. So you start and you get all of this out, and you've got some good stuff in here, right? This isn't all bad. This is not one of those like, you're tone deaf, you don't know how to play music, you should give up the guitar, right? Like this is not the case at all. This is just a case of, hey, you need a bit more practice, and here's what we're gonna do with this. But it doesn't mean that you can't learn this. It doesn't mean that you are inherently a bad person. So there, no
Thank you.
judgment here. Celia and Jonathan have literally gone through thousands and thousands of iterations of messaging. So
And it's true. I remember when I started at the company, I wrote long emails like this as well. And it is just sort of learning these little tips that will make all the difference. And I mean, you can send out a bunch of emails, you can think it's the greatest email ever, and you're still gonna have to make tweaks to it. So it's just about learning the skill set of it and taking that and testing it and continuously making the iterations you need to. So another thing, just like looking through this, is there a way that you could make this more about the prospect?
Oh, for sure. Because I know, like, I'm usually speaking with engineers specifically, and so like instead of trying to the reason that it's kind of worded like this is the leads that I've been given, it's really hard to figure out if it's the correct lead. And so I've been dealing with like a lot of software engineers instead of mechanical engineers. So I'm trying to figure out the right person to do that, which I guess doesn't even really matter. If they're not the right person, they're just going to delete the email. So like in that case, I can deal with, where the manufacturers actually have like the most pain, which is like making sure that the tooling is like more perfect, that like, hey, we can get you down to the best geometry, you want to test that, let's do it, let's play ball, instead of being like
Yep. And I think with that too, if you're sort of more direct about who you're trying to talk to, you will just cut out all of the noise. And if it's shortened, you're going to have more people actually read through the entire email. Because if we go back and think about just the fact that a lot of people really do look at their emails through their phones, or even on an email in general, people lose interest after a couple of lines. So you do want to keep it short. And if it's straight to the point, even if they're not the right person, they might get you to the right person. So it's really about sort of making sure they understand how this would benefit them. Like, this is your job, this is how this is going to help you.
all right. Well, let's get in and let's see how you just absolutely destroyed Gary's
Destroy. We did destroy.
yeah.
Bam.
Well, that's not terrible.
No, so it is. It's just going back into the sense that you can cut words, you can kill words, and it's still going to make sense. There are a few points in here. I'll kind of let Jonathan take over, but where we've italicized, I think there's definitely some tweaks that could be made. But I mean, it's not a bad email.
Thank you.
Yeah, I come from, my academic background's in philosophy, where we have a tendency to be particularly verbose. And if you got a 20-page paper or something you got to write, then it's gonna be a lot of unnecessary words in that. So that was by far my biggest struggle when I first started writing outbound sales copy. So I can very much relate to that.
Yeah, I'm in my first month of sales really after graduating from an accelerator program. And before that, I've spent the last 10 years in the legal industry. So I've been writing motions and stuff, which is obvious.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All makes sense. So yeah, as Celia mentioned, there's a bunch of stuff that can be cut while keeping the meaning. And then, if we can take these italicized parts and make them more focused on the prospect, that's going to go a long way.
Yeah, if I draw us back to what Jonathan was talking about earlier, the is, does, means. If you look at this messaging, you've got a lot of does in here, right?
Yeah.
It starts with eccentric mold is, right? And then we do these things, but not what it means.
Yeah.
And so what does it mean that, we guarantee injection molding quotes within a blah, 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 right? What does that mean, right? That, it means you're not waiting on the projects, right?
Right.
So it means that when you're behind with a project and you've got something on a tight deadline, that we're going to be the company to come through for you. And that's going to save you, X thousands of dollars, because your project isn't going to be backed up, because it's not just the cost of this, it's the cost of a delay if you don't have X piece. And I'm not sure if this is correct, but can you see the direction that I'm heading?
Oh, it's that you're totally correct.
Cool. I used to sell in a similar industry. I sold diesel generators to engineers for a while.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I'm familiar with the sort of bid spec approach and getting specified and getting listed. And
Gotcha,
I think you're in a really cool spot that if you're not getting your team to either 3D print or CNC your prospect's name and then physically mailing it to your biggest customers, you're wasting your time, because that'd be just the coolest
really
thing in the
cool.
world to do. I had a CNC machine. I did it once on a big piece of wood. It took so long. But this was a long time ago, and CNC machines have come a long way.
Oh, yeah.
And ours was designed for cutting furniture. So
oh, wow.
it was to do the CAD, to do this. Anyway, I'm rambling. So I'm going to pass it back to John and Celia, and they're going to talk about how this is clear and relevant, and add some suggestions in there.
Awesome. So we won't go through quite all the details on this page, but this is just a way that you could kind of apply this. So you could initially do a pass through, answer the questions for yourself, and then go back in and figure what can I do to optimize these things? So a couple of suggestions were, kill all unnecessary words, right? Which take a stab at there. Focus on the impact of the prospect. Highlight the uniqueness of what your company does, right? That's, producing the prototype in as few as 5 days. That sounds very impressive to me. I have no background in this, but it sounds impressive. So letting them know those things, and then framing that in the way of what it means, like Colin was talking about, that deadline is coming down and you don't have to push it back because we've got you. You paint that picture focused on them. I would recommend probably speaking specifically about the industry you're targeting. So kind of reference, I saw on your website, there's a number of industries that you serve. Make some casual mention of that partway through it. If you can name drop some of your customers, because you do have some large customers, then maybe sneak that in there. Again, that's more just to support the very relevant thing that you said, as opposed to a crutch for not being specific. And then one thing that you could maybe try to do is you might be able to use LinkedIn to get a better idea of who holds responsibilities at a given company. So it probably depends on the size of company, but if you have sales navigator, you might be able to do engineer as a title, and then make sure their job function isn't like IT or something. You might be able to use like a keyword of like molding or mold or machine or something like that. Yeah. So and yeah, feel free to hit up Celia or me on LinkedIn after, and we can maybe talk about some of these more specific strategies. But there might be a way to get the targeting just a little bit more refined, because that sounds like it's a bit of a struggle for you right now. Yeah, software engineers are everywhere.
Yes. Oh yeah.
All right. So I think then we would move on to what people have submitted, because Victor is gone, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we got one from Lisa. Before we jump, though, Chris, who is asking, he's been told that the CTA needs to be within the first sentence or two due to mobile viewing. So our call to action doesn't come to the very end. Do we have any data on where the CTA is placed?
I think the CTA should be at the bottom, personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, you need to help them understand why they should bother giving attention to you and their time to you before you ask them for things.
Yeah.
So even on mobile, if your message is short enough, it'll still be there, or it'll be close, and the things you've said are engaging enough that they'll read a couple extra sentences to get to it.
You don't want to be overtly aggressive in this type of approach. This is sort of more of a soft approach where you're trying to have a conversation with someone. If you're getting a cold email, you probably aren't going to want to jump on a call with someone within the first line of an email. So the way we sort of look at it is by even with your first email asking if it's actually the correct contact. Once you're sure of that validation, then that's sort of when you get the interest, that's when you should be asking. I think I mean, that's just my opinion. I think asking for a call, if that's what your CTA is, within the first line of it is a little bit aggressive.
Because you're totally right there. And I think the way I like to think about it is, imagine you're having a conversation with somebody. And let's say, Celia, you and I just met right now. And I'm like, hey, Celia, can I sell you some stuff? And like, we've just exchanged names. And I was like, hey, do you want to buy some of my blue coffee mugs? I'm selling blue coffee mugs. You're like, well, no. Because I'm clearly demonstrating that I don't actually care about you. I have another webcam right here. I keep talking to that webcam and not this camera here. So in that context, if Celia and I are back in this conversation, I'm like, hey, Celia, do you drink coffee? She's like, oh, yeah, I drink coffee. I'm like, well, do you ever have troubles with your mugs tipping over? And she's like, well, sometimes. I'm like, and, do you have computer parts around you that, your laptop, you don't want to spill on your laptop because, your boss is a bit of a jerk and he'd get angry if you spill coffee on your laptop. She's like, oh, I definitely have a jerk boss. Right? See, now we're a little bit deeper in the conversation. I'm like, hey, I've got these mugs that don't tip over when they're next to your laptop. Is that interesting to you? And she's like, fuck yeah. My boss is such a jerk. I don't want to spill coffee on my laptop because I don't have to talk to him again. Right, you can see how we've gone from it's so much more like when I add the CTA at the very end, it's so much deeper. It's so much more relevant because we've set up this is the ask. But if I just jump right to, do you want to buy coffee mugs that don't tip over? We haven't created that context. And if you think about where Celia is reading this email, it's in her inbox, right? And she's probably she's going through her inbox and she's reading another 10, 15, 20, 100 emails. How many unread emails are in your inbox right now, Celia?
Like 60.
There you go. Jonathan, how many unread emails in your inbox?
I can't see right now. If I didn't filter out a lot, probably similar amounts.
Yeah. I'm a Gmail slob. I don't mark all my emails read. I don't delete my inbox or delete things out of my inbox. I just let it, if it goes past page 1, it doesn't exist anymore. I probably have 10,000 unread emails in my inbox. And if you're not in the first 25, probably not going to get a response. And so coming back to it, Celia is jumping from context of one email to context of another email to context of another email. And in one, she's got somebody emailing her about, hey, buy this thing. And another, it's her boss sending like, hey, here's an update on that thing. Another, it's a client. And then all of a sudden, here's your email, right? Now, in this context, she doesn't know what your company does. And so you need to slowly walk her to the point of, hey, do you drink coffee? Yes. Do you drink coffee in front of your laptop? And then she's going, absolutely. Okay, well, do you ever worry about spilling coffee on your laptop? Great. Hey, now that you've set that context in her brain, now you need to ask her that question.
Well, I have two quick things to add to this. One is what Slack means. Slack means your CEO actually seeing what you sent them and responding to you. And then I had a very visceral analogy here about dating. So if you're trying to attract the interest of someone is the first thing that you're going to do is say, hey, I'm Jonathan. Would you like to go to dinner now? Probably not. Unless you're devastatingly attractive, that might work. It's still pretty abrasive and rude, and I wouldn't recommend it. But it's not the way that you would approach that, right? You need to understand that person a bit more, and you need to position some kind of value before you try to make a leap like that.
There needs to be some wooing.
Yeah. To woo the prospect with your words before you try to get on a call with them.
It is. It's true, though. You really do. Because unless you can create a reason that they should talk to you, why would they?
HR people might.
HR
get on calls.
Yeah.
But other than that, definitely not. All right. Any other messaging to take a stab at?
Yeah, I mean, before we bail, Carrie, any more questions on your messaging here before we jump on to? I think we got Lisa's coming up next.
Well, how about the subject line? What would you guys suggest for a subject line instead of that? Because like I said when I sent the email in the first place, I feel like that's just a really crappy subject. It feels a little clickbaity and just like not.
So you know what? I would use a subject line like that simply because you are still trying to figure out who you're talking to. If you're shortening up that message, but I would shorten up that subject line too to be something like "right direction?" ?
Okay.
I'll just stop there.
Yeah, Jonathan,
Awesome.
can you go back to the message that we proposed, just so I can have a look at it? Fantastic.
This is not fully what we proposed. It was more, what can we remove from it while still conveying the same message?
Perfect. And so if you think about your messaging as a 1-2 punch, right? The subject line sets the context of this is what the email is about. So saying I'm in the right place isn't a bad thing to do if your call to action is, are you the best person to speak with?
Okay.
Right? And
cool.
so it's those two, and then the body is the duck and the weave and the positioning of the sort of second punch to get you in the right spot. And so what you're asking for is, are you the right person? And here's the context, and the body conveys this is the context of the person that I'm looking to reach, right? And so we've had emails where instead of saying, are you the right person to speak with? We've gone with, here's what we do. Is that relevant to you? Right? Like I saw that you're, engineer on XYZ types of projects. Do you ever deal with, do you ever get stuck on tricky injection molding XYZ? Do you ever need to 3D print, pictures of your coworker's face because you like to prank people, right? We can help you. Is that relevant to you? Are you a prankster, right? This is bad messaging, and I wouldn't use this messaging exactly, but this is the kind of general idea that you can convey with. It doesn't have to be just, are you the best person to speak to?
Yeah.
Right. But
and then the way you're positioning that as well is opening it up for them to refer you to that person that you actually need to talk to.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Thank you guys so very much. I really appreciate the help.
No problem. We bill by the hour. You've been here for about an hour and a half, so we'll send you an invoice. There's 3 of us, so.
When I do my first demo, I'll pay you guys. So in 3 years.
Yeah, the only payment we'll ask for you to do is subscribe to the channel and throw us a like or something.
Deal. I can definitely make that payment.
Awesome. Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we're going to jump on to, I think Lisa's messaging is coming up next, and we'll get to Victor's if we got time. And so we're going to go to Lisa. Lisa, if you're here in the chat, let us know. Just type 1 so that I know you're still here, still alive. And then if anybody else is here, just remember you can send an email to Marisol@predictablerevenue.com. And she's here. Perfect. Thanks, Lisa. And Marisol will throw your email into our slides, and then we'll get to it next. And so type a 2, anybody in the chat, type a 2 if you've got some messaging that you want us to have a look at. And Marisol will get in touch with you so that we can get it into, I think it's right after Victor's at the bottom there.
I think I need to just exit and come back into it really quick. So one moment.
We got Lisa and then Laura. And I apologize. I'm gonna, Mr. Jane, I'm gonna butcher your first name, Ujwal. Did I come even remotely close? Let me know in the comments if I'm a total idiot or if I did a decent job with that one.
There we go.
All right, Lisa, I see that you're here, BDR at Guidance. Let me know in the chat. What does guidance do, Lisa? And Jonathan and Celia, feel free. Let's. I love the Farmer Boy reference. So I'm going to pass it back to you. Have a look at this messaging. How Farmer Boy transformed their online strategy. Are you selling to farmers? That would be awesome. Does your website convey deep knowledge in the industry? Guidance frequently works with clients in the ag space, supply space, like company name. I thought you'd enjoy a new case study. Name, where is website redesign located on your business journey? Oh, web redesign. Okay. That doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense for us to schedule a free strategic review with my CIO or SVP of Commerce, Brian Beck. Sounds like is it Marvel? They always use the like Peter Parker, Hulk Hogan.
Alliteration.
No, Hulk Hogan's of WWF. Alliteration in the names. Let me know if you have any questions. I look forward to hearing from you. Best. I like that you're following up with Best. I actually hate that in regular emails from people. We had somebody that worked with us a super long time ago, and she always signed her emails Best. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? But in the testing, the SalesLoft did, it showed up as it has, funny enough, the best reply rates and the best impact. So if I start from the bottom, I like that you're ending with Best. Please let me know if you have any questions. You don't need to. I'd say I'd murder that right away. I wonder if I can just. Oh yeah, I'm gonna use Zoom's annotate, and I'm just gonna butcher this. And Jonathan, Celia, please feel free to jump in here. But I would strike this instantly, and then I would pick one call to action. This is what immediately jumps out: is you've got two question marks. You're only
I
allowed
would just cut
one
it.
question mark. Go ahead, Celia.
Hold on.
While Celia's doing that, I would say that it is pretty concise. It could be a little bit more concise, but it is, this is a pretty digestible size.
I mean, we're going to for sure nitpick this because I was kind of thinking the same thing. I agree with Colin in the sense that I would ditch one of those CTAs. Kind of going back to my earlier comment, I don't know that I would be asking for a call on the first email. It really depends how targeted this is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One thing I would maybe think about is, so there's not a lot of pain here necessarily, or there's not necessarily clarity of like what this would mean for them or like what it is that their problem is. So you approach that a bit in that first question, like does your website convey your deep knowledge of the industry? But if it doesn't, like what does that mean for them, right? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Do I need to convey my deep knowledge of the industry? Maybe.
I think it's a bit of a broad question. I like that it's a question, but I feel like there's not enough context for me to necessarily know what you're talking about. However, when you go into the second line, kind of sums it up. I don't hate this. What I'm saying.
All right, I'm just pulling up guidance. Oh, I actually found the Farmer Boy case study. I've got her.
Yeah, what can you pull out of that case study to make this really relevant to the person, right? Because this is concise, which is great. You've got support that's specific to their industry. That's great. But why, I'm still not necessarily sure why I should read the case study.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I also don't think you've gone deep enough with does your website convey deep knowledge of the industry? Why is that? Why does it matter? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, and so Lisa, you're in the chat. Let us know who, why would that matter? Right? You're selling this to, are you selling this to a farm? Are you selling this to, let us know in the chat. I'm looking at your website to try and figure this out.
Thinking probably like digital marketing in
website
agriculture,
web design, develop and deliver e-commerce. So I'm guessing they're helping build like Magento, BigCommerce, Shopify sites, and they're selling, I guess, helping farmers sell online. This is the first email in the sequence we use. Cool. Lisa, who are you selling to?
Oh, I think I've actually prospected guidance before now that I think about it.
All right. So
ironically.
Lisa, here's an exchange. We're gonna help you on this email. You're gonna help Jonathan get a reply to that email. He probably sent it a year and a half ago for a different client.
Yeah, that client's not with us anymore.
And TDL Rest, how do we have only 1,500 subs? This is great, such great content. Thank you so much. We've just started streaming regularly recently, so we're really helping to build that up. So if you like it, hope you subscribe, and if you do subscribe, then we'll keep doing this on a more regular basis. Okay, so basically, so I'm gonna put this in the context of we are helping farms sell their products like through e-commerce, and so I would say, instead of does your website convey deep knowledge of the industry, I feel like you got to 5 whys this one. So this was going after the B2B ag industry. Okay, so not direct to like a farmer trying to sell B2C, but maybe somebody that's trying to sell equipment to farmers. And so I think I would go one level deeper than does it convey like deep knowledge of the industry. Like why does that matter? Like who cares? Who cares about that? Why should I care about that? Right? Like it's one thing to do it, but you're not going to do it just for the sake of doing it. You're going to do it for the sake of like what? And so I would answer that. And if you're like, what is this crazy person talking about? Just do a Google search or go into Wikipedia and look up 5 whys, right? It's something that I think made popular by Toyota. I don't know if they developed it themselves, but basically it's an approach where you say, okay, you start with, why are you sending this email? It's like, oh, well, I want to turn them into I want to get a reply. Well, why do you want to get a reply? Well, I want to have a conversation with them. Why do you want to have a conversation with them? I want to book a meeting. Well, why do you want to book a meeting with them? I want to turn them into an opportunity, to close them into sale, to turn into revenue for my company, so that I can help my company grow faster this year, Why do I want to do that? So that we can hit our earnings guidance, or we can raise our A round, or we can. And so you see how I just leveled all the way down from I want to send an email to I want to help grow my company. And so I think you need to go sort of one layer deeper into why is this important. And I like you said, this is email 1, and you've got in the subject line. I don't know, like like Celia said, it's not a bad email. And so I would certainly test this, and I'd test it alongside of something with a shorter subject line. And then I like how Farmer Boy transformed their online strategy. I would push that into a PS, right? Like if that's your case study, and I'm assuming Farmer Boy is like some sort of supplier to the ag industry. So I would push that into, a PS. I definitely would not include a link in the first email, because that's gonna tank your deliverability, and you want to really avoid putting as many links in there. Like you're allowed 1 link max. This is not a hard and fast rule, but generally the more links you put in, the less likely it is your email gets through.
Mm-hmm. One thought I had around this is, I think what you're trying to convey to them, especially if we're thinking about like loss aversion, is that they are losing business by their website not being as optimized as it could be. So, I'm not sure what your deal size is, but if you have the ability to take some kind of custom variable, check out, the 100 websites that you're going to target or whatever, and just jot down like 1 or 2 points about their specific website that you could, pump into one of these lists. About like, hey, you know what? I noticed on your website that X and Y, are probably causing you to miss out on revenue, right? Would you be open to discussing how you can, something of that nature? So there's probably a way to personalize these that doesn't take too much time, and that would probably pay a lot of dividends. Again, provided that your deal size is big enough to have that make sense. And so it's a provocative first question, but they don't want to think that hard, basically, right? So you want to figure out like how can you frame it in a way where they don't have to think very hard. If you can just show them what you can show them what the problem is, tie that into what they care about, then they'll be like, oh, that's interesting. Those are some really specific things about my site in particular, and they can be like a list of like 5 generic things, and you just attach like 1 or 2 of them to each of these prospect websites for like a custom variable. But yeah, I think it's definitely an opportunity for something like that where there's a lot of precision around it.
Perfect. I'm just writing a couple. I don't know if you can, I don't think you can see that. There you go. So this is one approach, right? Subject, best person, two companies, blah, 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 blah. I forgot to add my CTA. But like, would that be relevant to you? Or, hey, name, you know, I noticed that a lot of companies like yours or like so-and-so and yourself use their websites to, their customers use their websites to, pull up product specs pretty frequently. We've worked with Farm Boy to yada, yada, yada. Is that something that'd be relevant to you? And again, please don't use this messaging word for word. Write out a terrible draft. And you know what? If coming out of this, email it to Marisol. She'll connect you with the three of us, and we'll actually help you take another pass on this when we finish this one up. When you finish this up. And so if you got some more iterations, then definitely send it our way and hit us up, and we're more than happy to help you. But before we move on from Lisa, Lisa, has this been helpful? Anything else you want us to sort of, any other feedback on this message that you were looking for? And then while we're waiting for Lisa in the chat, Celia, Jonathan, anything to add to this before we move on to the next one?
Yeah, I probably would adjust the subject line a bit as well. I think it's a great marketing subject line, but I'm not sure if it's going to get the same types of open rates as we might be looking for this purpose. So,
I think doing the PS is definitely a smart call on that one. I mean, as I mentioned before, subject lines 1 to 4 words, making mention of what's in there is kind of the way to go.
I actually prospected e-commerce companies for a while, and one thing that I found pretty effective was I just did idea for website name, and I just used their website name as a variable, right? Idea for farmerboy.com or something like that. And then that's like a very low effort way to personalize, but they know that's for them, right? So that could be a very time effective way to use some kind of custom variable. And then if you tied that in and said, hey, you know what, I was checking out farmerboy.com, I noticed X and Y are probably causing you to miss out on revenue, and then you just tie that into what you do, I think that'd be really compelling.
Love it. So Lisa, when you get when you make that next iteration, throw it in a Google Doc, share it with Marisol, and we will make sure we get it. We'll get our comments back to you. I think Marisol's thrown. Who do we have next here? Laura. We got Laura's. Laura, are you still in the chat? Throw us a 1 or a hi if you're still in the chat with us here. All right, so while we're waiting for Laura to see if she's still online here, let's look at the example. Just started trying to write this today. Don't have a subject line yet or a wrap-up call to action. Laura is here. Perfect. What does your ideal prospect look like? Are they using certain technology? Is there a specific problem you can solve? Do they have a budget? What else would you like to know? With Buzzboard, you can spend your time with prospects most likely to buy what you're selling. You have customer-facing reports that show them where and why they need your help. And you'll even be able to show them how their digital efforts stack up against their direct competition. Okay, so let's digest that. I'm going back to my one customer or one, like I understand what you're doing. You're trying to set the context of like, hey, do you know this? Do you know that? Do you know that? So those aren't real call to actions. They're kind of rhetorical. I think I don't know. What do you think, Jonathan? What do you think, Celia? Too many question marks?
Yeah, I want to provide a really quick context about what Buzzboard is. So it looks like you have a data platform that provides insights on small, medium businesses. It's like the super short version. And then hopefully that helps just contextualize this a little bit more.
Needs-based targeting using digital signals to start more relevant conversations faster. So that's our acquisition piece. Grow wallet share, custom insights on deepen the dialogue and build trust, and then retain your customers, empower your frontline workers with better data to improve customer experience and reduce churn. So it sounds like it's a AI engine that's recommending messaging or content or pieces based on either, like, I'm guessing intent data, public, private intent data that you can pull.
looks like a pretty interesting product, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to get people to check it out in detail, right?
Yeah.
So there's probably a way to present the same, rather than asking all these questions, there's probably one question that you could ask that's tied to a specific persona that would convey the same thing. So, I think that ultimately the detail is like, the challenge of outbound sales is you don't know what your prospect needs. And in a lot of cases, your targeting is not so sophisticated that you aren't spending a big chunk of your time reaching out to businesses that are not relevant for you at all. So there's some kind of way of conveying that in a question or in a statement about, how frustrating is it for your reps to, spend all this time, building messaging and lists, only to find out that 90% of the companies actually aren't relevant to what you do. Something like that, I think you could do in one sentence. And I would say, yeah, that's really frustrating. Frustrating for me. Yeah, I would think about the conciseness and painting a picture of what their challenge is. And it really depends who you're targeting, right? You're targeting marketing? Are you targeting a sales leader? I would probably say something a little bit different to them. Are you targeting, sales ops, a CMO? So who in particular was this? What persona was this message going to be trying to target? Would be helpful to know, I think. And if it was going to be more of a catch-all, I would probably segment them a little bit further.
I'm just writing some messaging here while we're waiting for Laura to let us know who are you going after. I'm going to assume sales leaders. And so I'm going to start with like a subject line like buying signals or relevant prospects or something that's going to kind of set the context. And then I would frame this up with, a trigger event or one thing that that's going to make it more relevant is like, I noticed that you have X number of SDRs over at, your company. Yeah, she's going after sales leaders. Great. So I saw that you have X SDRs or salespeople. And then, so how would you, so what we want to do is we set the context. We want to build to a trigger set and sort of transition to how this is relevant. Writing messaging live is not easy. So how would you, Celia, help me out here? What would you go with next if we're going to set the context of, if we're going to start with the context of, or would you even start with, I noticed you have SDR, X number of SDRs over at company as your trigger?
You could maybe even say something like, how many hours a week do you think they spend reaching out to prospects that don't have any use for what you do? Something like that. Or if you can quantify, if you have research around that, you can quantify that somewhere, then that might be interesting. All right, like how, if, and I know you probably can't promise this, but like, if your SDRs were only targeting companies that, fit your use case or whatever, how much impact would that have on your meeting numbers, your revenue, those sorts of things? Like what is, again, like really painting the, like, what does this mean for them as opposed to what it does? Yeah, exactly. Right. How frustrating it is to take all this time to build a list to find that actually isn't as targeted as you thought it was. Right. So there's lots of frustrating things about targeting and list building. So you have tons of ammunition for pictures that you can paint in this area.
Right. And so you can see how this is not, again, these are only suggestions. This is not exactly how I would do it, but if you're going after like relevant prospects, right? I notice you have here, I noticed you have some SDRs. We found that SDRs spend X time going after prospects that aren't relevant. Is that something you're seeing with your reps? And Laura's saying, my challenge is that this is a high touch position. I send about 70 emails. So you're hitting 70 activities a day. That's a high touch position. Like, okay. 70 activities a day. You've probably got some time to do a little bit of personalization. If I'm in your shoes, like the way I would structure my day is like, depending on what time zone you're in, I'd probably modify it a bit, but I like to do my calls like in the morning, because if you look at the research, there's only like minor differences between when calling is and isn't effective. The best time to call is right now, right? Is when you're going to be on your game. You're probably going to get a bigger lift if you're calling within your, like the window where you're on your game, because you probably have some ideas, just like I had ideas about when our prospects most likely to pick up, that are wrong because it's based on data that's inaccurate, and not inaccurate, but statistically irrelevant. Like if I always get people picking up at 10 a.m., it doesn't necessarily mean that people in my buyer persona always pick up at 10 a.m. It just means that I had a streak, and that if you look in the grand scheme of things, you know, those 3 people that picked up that 1 hour, that one day at 10 o'clock it's not necessarily statistically significant. Anyway, long rambling way of saying, if you're going to call, make those calls, like build it into your day, do it at the same time every day. And that way you're always going to get your 70 activities in. So if I was you, I would have 2 calling blocks. And then at the end of my day, the last thing I do before I go home, I'm going to spend an hour researching the prospects I'm going to go after tomorrow. And then I'm going to take that data and I'm going to basically just go on LinkedIn and count how many SDRs do they have. I'm going to throw that into my Salesforce. I'm going to throw that into my Sales Laughter outreach. And then from there, I'm basically going to incorporate that into my template. And so that way you kind of build you've got your calling, like your executing portion of the day, you've got your emailing portion of the day, and then you've got your research portion of the day. And that allows you to split it up. Because 70 emails is a good number. It's not high, it's not low. In terms of like, it's not ultra high touch, but you do have some time to touch, but you still need to be fairly efficient here.
Mm-hmm. Another approach that you might be able to take that's even lower, a lower time commitment than that is you can use whatever your database is, your data supplier, find companies that have SDRs, use that company list as what you're targeting, find the director of sales or whoever, and then you can confidently say that you know their company uses SDRs. Be like, hey, you know what? I was researching such and such companies. So you leverage SDRs. We found that they do this, or how many hours a week do you think they spend doing this, or like wasting on people who aren't relevant to them. So I think there's probably some ideas that you could incorporate that make it just a little bit more personalized, but don't necessarily take up the entirety of your day. And we're happy to share some of those thoughts if you want to shoot us a message after. Get a little more into the weeds there.
Laura, is this helpful here? Let us know in the chat here. And if there's anything else that you might want us to have a look at or test. While we do that, I'm going to do a time check. She's saying that's great. Perfect. We still got a pretty healthy stream here. We still have about 180 people hanging out with us. In 7 minutes, I have to go grab my 2 little 2.5-year-old twin boy monsters from my wife, who has another meeting. So I'm going to bow out in about 7 minutes, but I'll leave the stream alive. I'll kill my video. Marisol, you can hit the end stream button. And Celia, Jonathan, I'll try and get the kids down and come back. And if you guys are still here, then you're still here. But if there's people here and they're asking questions and they're hanging out and they need help, we'll hang out. And if people are going to bail and go, then we can release everybody from their duties. But Ujwal, let us know in the comments. Say hey if you're still here, and we're going to jump onto your messaging next. I'm just going to read it because I can't. Let's have a look here. Fair winds and following Z's. Hi, Name. It makes me happy to see her campus media being 100% women owned and operated. It's an influence. I write to you as I want to influence more people. Over the last 90 days, around 12 million emails were sent and only 11% were being read. 89% of people never got a chance to see your email. Moreover, 50% chance to emails to Yahoo and Outlook landed in spam. Our AI-powered platform picks up the time when your subscribers are bound to check their mailbox and delivers the email in 2.6 seconds directly into their inbox. Interesting. With send time optimization coupled with delivery optimization, credit analysis, we're going to show you a 4x increase in your engagement. I respect your partnership with MailChimp, but we can give you an uplift of 30 to 35%. Let me know if you want more, and I'll be Bridget. So the prospect's name, and I'll be happy to assist. I wish nothing but fair winds and following seas to you and her campus media. P.S. I'm excited to share these podcasts. They cover A to Z of email deliverability. Tune in now. Seems like there's a little bit of crossover in our industries here, though it sounds like this is a bit more of a marketing tilt than we are. But I can hear the monsters on the other side of this door. So I'm going to kill my video. I'm going to go help my wife, and I'll be back in a few minutes. Back to you, Celia and Jonathan.
So, I mean, I would almost just kill this whole second paragraph, because you can take some of those findings and put them in with the value of your own platform.
One thing I like is that there's a lot of personalization, right? Yeah, there's a lot of statistics, a lot of personalization about them specifically. That part I think you've nailed really well. There's definitely an opportunity, I think, for conciseness, which Cecilia was getting at there.
I think you always want to be careful if you're mentioning a partnership with another company, if it's a competitor or anything like that as well, because I mean, based on data, things can change. So you want to be very, very confident in that fact. Maybe something like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard you're in a partnership with, or something along those lines.
Even if you did reference MailChimp, sounds like you probably have pretty decent confidence there. So you might do something like, I see you're using MailChimp, just wanted to share some data with you over the last 90 days, all these things happened. So I think, I think the content is here. I think it needs to be probably consolidated. And while the personalization statistics are great, you're targeting marketing directors, right? Okay, so they're not going to have to think very hard to draw the leap from their email deliverability to their outcomes. So I don't think you need to be too explicit there. I would test two things. So I would take essentially this content, consolidate down a little bit, test that. And I would test one where you maybe don't even mention your solution that much. You do maybe the first, the second paragraph, you throw MailChimp's name in there somewhere. If you're using MailChimp, want to share some stats with you, blah, 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 share all the things specific to you. Would you be open to seeing how you can improve these metrics? Like, you might even be an opportunity to just not talk about your solution at all, just highlight the problem that they have and the issue that is, and then just see if they're open. So I would probably test something like that against something where you do provide a little bit more context, and see where you get better outcomes. I think going through all this effort for personalization, you could probably add a little bit more to the subject line. Or even say, like, your emails aren't being read. That might be a little aggressive, but there could be something of that nature that's like really like disruptive to this type of person. Yeah, I mean, overall, I think there's a lot of good things, great things here. It's just a matter of making it a little bit more digestible, I think. Be a little aggressive. I guess we have to keep providing feedback because Colin's not here. What else you got?
I agree. I've got nothing else.
Yeah. No, I think this is, like I said, I think this is quite good. I think it could be a little bit more about what it means to them, but the level of personalization is very high. And then make it a little more digestible. Metrics are interesting. I think marketing directors are people that deal a lot with metrics and they really care about them. So I think this is a type of person where including those things I think is really valuable. I think it's like a general comment, not about your message, but about metrics in general, is that if you are targeting someone whose job isn't that metric focused, probably frame it in different ways. But just to reiterate, I do think that is appropriate here for this demographic, this persona that you're targeting.
I just think with this whole "I write to you" thing, I get the point and the point that's trying to be made with it, but sometimes there doesn't need to be all of these extra metrics in there.
I think "I write to you" could just be replaced with "I see you're using MailChimp." Thought you might find these stats interesting. Boom.
Yeah.
I guess, are you, I guess Marisol can probably see the chat. So if you have any other aspects of this you want us to dig into a little bit more, if you have any specific questions about that, if you can shoot them to Marisol, that would be great. And she can kind of convey them to us. I think there's only so many things to dissect in a given email, right? I would be curious of what the kind of the remaining parts of your cadence look like. I would say your next email after something like this should definitely be a bumper email of some sort. Really short, really digestible. Hey, any thoughts? Are you the best person to reach out to about this? Something like that, one sentence, because you've taken all this time to create all this good content and for it to be so personal that I don't think there's a lot more that you really need to convey to this person. So it's really a matter of just hitting them at the right time and guiding them back to this email that obviously took a lot of time to gather all these stats for. So just be careful of maybe drowning out the value that you've created with this email by sending more emails that have a lot of context. Maybe you're not doing that, but just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that point. That's sort of going back into what we were talking about before. Even if you were to do like any thoughts and then a third email was like, check out this link or something like that. Keep them simple. This one has a lot of great information in it, and I don't think you need to go any further than this. There could be some tweaks just to A/B test to see what works better, but overall, it's very well done.
Mm-hmm. Let's chat about some resources while Colin's coming back here. So, a lot of this presentation was, our own experience of predictable revenue, but we do still take advantage of all the other thought leaders that are in this space and all the other people who contribute to these types of topics. And sometimes they introduce something that's very novel to us and we go, oh, that's awesome, let's incorporate that. And other times they explain something that maybe we're already doing, but they explain it in like a really effective way, like Badass Fire Mario. And then we might have used that in this presentation. So there are a number of links here that kind of expand around a lot of the concepts that were discussed. Relevance and trust, the chain of relevance that Colin talked about, how you can do personalization at scale. That article, I believe, is with our own senior SDR, Sarah, but was based off of the work of Beck Holland. I really like this sales community, Death to Fluff. They do a great job of providing you with a lot of very tactical things that you can do to bring your messaging to another level. The Hemingway app is your resource to write things more simply and shorter. It's a great tool. It's free. Fire Mario came from this review of the Sales Hackers Success Summit. Sales Loft, we did discuss some ideas from this article about all different ways to personalize sales emails in 2020. We pulled some metrics from this guide on email optimization, like around hey as the greeting, the 1-to-4 word subject lines, and etc. There's a bunch of other good content in there you probably want to look out into. Alfie March has some great content in his complete guide to cold outbound emails in 2020, because there's not the ability to go into as much depth as we would have liked to on this call. And Patrick McLean on how to kill a word. Judging by all the examples we received today and my own experience when I first started, this is probably going to be a great resource for a lot of people. He really talks about getting down to the the meaning of what you're saying and avoiding essentially rambling on about it. That's really important in kind of the competitive attention economy that we have. Cool. Welcome back, Colin. Hope the kids are okay.
Oh yeah, we're just putting them down for a nap. I'm noticing. It sounds like you're wrapping up. Did you get to Paige's question here about advice for sales emails from software solution companies, like trends or stats or anything to open or catch their attention?
Like custom software solutions?
That's what I'm guessing. Software solution companies. That's going to be my guess. But Paige, let us know in the comments.
Custom software is pretty hard. I'm just going to throw that out there right away. There's a bit of an uphill battle there. The challenge with it is that it's hard to, in many cases, it's hard to convey what makes you unique. So I would spend a lot of time trying to figure out what that is. Mm-hmm. You might get benefit from some kind of triggers like Buzzboard could provide.
Free plug.
Look at that. Free plug. It's just hard because if someone isn't looking to have support for their software project right now, they're not a great target, and it's very hard to figure out what that is. If you can find some kind of tool that gets a little more insight into that, if you can see that they're hiring someone with a specific skill set that you can match, that might be a good trigger. If you can, I know not probably your responsibility specifically, but if you can figure out ways to draw more people to your website with, content marketing and follow up more on like inbound leads, there's, I think, a tremendous opportunity there as well. But are we actually talking about what their company does, or we just assume something that's not right?
Oh, Paige is saying enterprise software.
Okay,
so we're not talking about, go ahead. For Fortune 500s. And Paige, are you building? Enterprise. I can't spell enterprise. Just going to ask Paige to share the website so that we can get a sense for like a little bit more context. It's funny. I feel like at this stage I could probably, and assuming I had my email writing chops back, I could probably write like a full set of cold emails just looking at somebody's website and do a okay enough job. Just out of practice of clients not having enough information for us to build things off of and having to make it up kind of as you go a little bit.
So I just want to jump in. I actually have to get out of here.
Fair enough.
See ya.
Cool. Thanks for hanging out, Celia. I appreciate you you doing this. I know we've been live here for like 2 hours, so much appreciated. And John, I know we'll try and get to Paige's, and then we'll definitely wrap by the 1 o'clock mark. Good. All right. So Paige, let us know what your website. But I would say, like, if you're looking for examples, I think if you're looking for like, I would say examples of like a framework of where to start. I think the Complete Guide to Cold Outbound in 2020 is a good one. If you're looking for those micro adjustments of, okay, I have my base messaging. I'm just looking for something that's like I want to increase the personalization. I want to increase the reply rates. Then I'd say the personalization at scale from Beck Holland is really great stuff. If you don't have any of this and you're trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I build that messaging? I would start with the chain of relevance link from Predictable Revenue. That's a phenomenal one. And that's our man, Kenny, who put that together. It's based on a lot of jobs to be done, research. Yeah. Okay. And so Paige has shared her website, their website. It's Systems Guild. So they are a custom software consulting firm. So one of the challenges with custom software development or any sort of services, like, I don't know, like demand gen, booking meetings, LinkedIn, like LinkedIn prospecting services. These are all things that, we can put, we're the experts and we do this and we do that on our website, but so can everybody else. Right. And because you don't have, she's also in charge of Rebuff. like it's stuff that anybody can say. And with software, you can say, here's what our differentiator looks like, and it's the software. It's how we've built it. But with custom services, you're selling basically what the client needs, right? So you're saying, hey, we can do basically any project. And when you're going to a large audience and you're saying, hey, we can do everything for everybody, you're not really customizing your message to be specific to one individual or 10 individuals. And really, I think my goal with messaging, and Jonathan, like, correct me if I'm wrong or if you're different here, but the point of messaging is to have a very intimate conversation with just a few people, as opposed to sending emails that are super relevant to absolutely everybody. Because we want to get, like, I don't care if I send 100 emails, I don't care if 90 of them, it's the wrong person, it's the wrong messaging. If 10 of them are like, oh, that's exactly what I was thinking about, right? Like if those 10 people that are thinking like, hey, this is exactly what I need, are going to be way more interested than generating 50 out of 100 people that are like moderately or minorly interested.
And so I think one of the ways that you would approach that is you want to find, like you mentioned, trends, problems that exist in the marketplace, and then be really granular. Like, you're targeting the director of business intelligence at a manufacturing company because they are trying to figure out how to aggregate all of the data that they get from their IoT devices. And so you talk about that, right? You're going to, I think, have to make some assumptions about what it is that they're after and talk about those things. Otherwise, it becomes so general that it's really hard to get anywhere.
Yeah. So like, I'm going to pull up your case studies here. So they've got Aldi as a case study, which is amazing. And so like, if I was doing this, I'd be going after, like if I'm in your shoes, I'd be using that case study to build a case in the retail space. So I'd be going after specifically, perfect. A little long. Yeah. Thanks, Brattle. I'd be going after, like, niching down and going after specifically people that are similar to Aldi, right? And the trick here is the value to the customer, the value to you, the value from you that you're providing to the customer is that unique experience. And so in some ways, that case study is your product, right? And so what you need to do is find people that product is relevant to. So finding companies that are like Aldi and saying, hey, these are the things that we did. We have a tremendous amount of experience. Our experience is what we are selling here, because that's how you differentiate. And I'll give you another example. A friend of mine I have a couple friends that had similar software developer companies, and they both had people that wrote, if you're a software developer, if you're in, so they had people from the core Ruby on Rails, people that had contributed code to the Ruby on Rails community or core project. And if you're not in software development, that's kind of a big deal. And so their big thing, both of these shops, was, hey, we've got Rails core contributors, so we're going to build the Rails shop. Right? But if I go back to Jonathan's presentation, right, and what he was talking about earlier about it does means, or is does means, we're too far in the is and the does, right? And we're not so much into the what does it mean, right? Because it doesn't really matter if you got competent engineers or not. If we don't know how to build X, Y, and Z, or if it's not going to be relevant, it doesn't really matter. And so one of them did really well. One of them didn't do really well. And the one that did really well was the guy who niched down and said, okay, well, we happen to know Rails. And so who is that going to be relevant to? And what is the context that that's going to be relevant to? And it was specifically companies that were using Rails that hadn't upgraded their Rails version in a long time. And if you're not a developer, basically this is a pain in the butt thing to do. It's kind of like updating your computer. You know how you put that off, or updating your phone? You've got those updates and all you have to do is hit a button. Well, imagine if instead of hitting a button to update, you had to do a week's worth of work. And imagine that in order to do that update, in that week's worth of work, there was a good chance that it was going to create another week's worth of work. And there was also a 50-50 chance that it might break some things, and your customers would be mad, and your boss would be mad. And you're not using that time to build any features that the customers are asking for. So it's a tough decision to make. It is the right decision and at certain points, but what they saw a lot was that the versioning is out of date, and then there's security concerns, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just not a sexy thing. And so their way of niching down was saying, hey, we can help you do your Rails upgrade. So they went from we're software developers. We can do anything to specifically, we're going to upgrade this one part of your system that you probably don't want to do. And is probably not a massive priority for you right now, but it is something that can take down your site or cause security gaps.
And then they've built that credibility with that company for future projects, those land and expand.
Exactly. And that's how they got in. And that's why the Ruby on Rails core contributors were relevant, because it's like, hey, we've got guys that are contributing to that core project. Why not get them to run your next upgrade?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would echo that. The importance of being specific there is, I've had clients where, again, massive enterprise software, like specific software, not necessarily like custom developed for the client, but because it did so many things, you just can't communicate that. So you really need to just figure out who really cares about this one particular thing, and you have to talk to them about that. And so there's probably a lot more work up front on the targeting and figuring out those jobs and the obstacles. But it's not easy, but that's the path forward, and that's what will definitely set you apart from anybody else who does custom software that's reaching out to these same people. And there's probably a lot of people doing that. So I think you want to spend an inordinate amount of time focusing in on that.
Beautiful.
And if your manager, I don't know what level of management you're at, if your manager doesn't like that concept, we're happy to share our experience working with clients like that and how important that is.
100%.
Maybe we can get you some of that time. Yeah.
Marisol threw her email in earlier. It's our first name at our website. So if you need a little help convincing or showing some case studies of why this is important and helpful, then let us know. Just drop us an email and we'll be happy to help. I do want to bring this to a close because it is lunchtime for me. Jonathan's been here for 2.5 hours. Thank you so much. I will ask, if this was good content, if we help you out, if this was even a little bit interesting, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so that our marketing team sees that, hey, people are enjoying this, they're engaging, they're happy. That's your way of telling our marketing team that you want us to do this more. And hit that like button if you think Jonathan, Celia were awesome today. So we just want to get your feedback, and I'd love to have a conversation with everybody, but we got 150 people still hanging out. And so it's a bit tough to do. So do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of our content, and help us out there. And if you do subscribe, if you do hit that like button, you're going to get a chance to win a couple of books. We're giving away a copy of Predictable Revenue, a copy of Impossible to Inevitable. So if you haven't heard of those, you can check them out. I think we got links and summaries on our website, predictablerevenue.com. And if you need a hand with booking some meetings for your salespeople, booking some meetings for yourself, if you need some advice, if you're looking to build a huge SDR team, we are the company that does those kinds of things. If you don't know what SDR stands for, we can certainly help you out. So predictablerevenue.com is where you can find us. And thanks to everybody for hanging out. Lesta Liz, Julio, Alexander, Paige, Touch of Class Bridal, Paige again, Ujwal, thank you so much for hanging out. Marisol, thanks for moderating. Jonathan, thank you for answering everybody's questions and putting all these resources together. Big shout out to all of you for hanging out, and Jonathan for helping everybody.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Colin. I think one last thing to say here before we jump off. You've heard about Colin's email inbox, so if you have any questions, maybe shoot them to myself or Marisol or Celia, or feel free to hit us up on LinkedIn. But it's been a pleasure, and happy to dig deeper into some of these things with you as time permits. So don't be afraid to reach out. Perfect. Thanks, Paige, and thanks everybody. We'll shoot you an email shortly with all the details. Thanks so much, everybody. I'm going to click the end stream button, and we'll hopefully see you all next time. If this was good content, if this was helpful, hit that subscribe button, and you'll get a notification in YouTube. You got to hit the subscribe and then hit the bell icon, and you get a notification next time we go live. And I'm working on a bunch of YouTube content specifically to tackle some of the issues we talked about today, and I'm going to post those, and we're not going to share those up with the list. And the only way to get those is to hit the subscribe button. So make sure you check that out. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you again, Jonathan. I love the little flashing unicorn in the background. That is awesome. It is a light, and that is the fan on it. But yes, it is a unicorn. My wife is very partial to that. Beautiful. Right on. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Have a great one. See you later.